Hello, my name is Mark Zalepa, and I'll be your host today for the Southern Ontario Arm Wrestling Championships. You will have the chance to see some of Canada's best arm wrestlers coming to you from the Empire Bowling Lanes in Leamington, Ontario. I hope to teach you a bit about the sport of arm wrestling and where the sport is going in the future. In our first match of the day, we're in the men's right-handed 135-pound class, Isaac Friesen and James Langiel. We're into the quarterfinals now, which has basically 4 gentlemen left, 2 in the B side, 2 in the A side, which means the 2 in the A side are undefeated. The 2 in the B side have 1 loss. Isaac Friesen is from Ruscombe, Ontario, and James is from Oshawa. Both these gentlemen are rookies in the sport, but they've come a long way in a short time. The loser of this match will take 4th place. The winner goes on to take on the loser from the A side. As you can see, both gentlemen are pretty intense locking up, and James gets the jump and the win in a power hook. Isaac Friesen takes 4th. James goes on to take on the winner of the... Okay, in our next match in the A side, both undefeated today, we will have Bruno Morin and Guy Morin. Both these gentlemen are from Leamington. Guy weighs 125, Bruno weighs 135. They're both rookies in the sport, probably taking a cue from their Uncle Mike, who's Ontario Arm Wrestling Champion. Both the gentlemen being in a light class, you see a bit more speed than what you will when you get them to the upper big boys, as we like to call them. Takes a bit longer to lock up when you get to the quarterfinals and semis, because each guys have gone through all the preliminaries. They know they have to save their strength. And the winner with speed, Bruno Morin. Guy now has the chance to go down to take on James Langiel in the semifinals. And there again with his speed, showing an outside hook. The referees for today, I'll mention, are Kevin Kelly, the referee standing up, and Rick Barbet. Both these gentlemen are sanctioned by the Canadian Arm Wrestling Federation, are qualified to referee anywhere in the world. Now we're going to the men's right-hand 150-pound Class B division. Both these gentlemen have 1 loss. And in arm wrestling, it is a double elimination tournament, which means you have to lose twice to be out. We have Dave McEwen from London, Ontario, and Luc Faubert from Ottawa. Both these gentlemen weighed in at 150 pounds. Both Dave and Luke are former Canadian champions, both on a comeback tour, basically. They've been out of the sport for a bit and just decided to come back and see how good the competition was. Dave McEwen is a much more relaxed power puller, where Luke is much more fired up. He likes to use his speed. See how much speed he can use against one of the strongest men under 150 pounds. Dave McEwen has also won many championships in the States. He's traveled all over North America. Luke basically likes to stay in Canada, but has traveled to the worlds before. As you see, sometimes it takes a bit longer to lock up, especially when you have 2 drastically different styles in the sport. Luke with his quick top roll, and Dave with his powerful arm likes to stop you in the center of the table like you just did. But Luke's holding on tough. That's quite a surprise, especially with the power of Dave McEwen. But Luke can't hold on. Dave McEwen is the winner in his classic power hook. Luke takes 4th. Dave goes on to take on the loser between Mike Morin and Steve Thomas. And there you go, showing the power of Dave McEwen, pulling his elbow to the back of the pad, which extends Luke's arm. As long as your elbow stays on the pad, you can place it anywhere in that 4-inch square area. Now we're going to Mike Morin and Steve Thomas. Both these gentlemen are undefeated today in the 150-pound class. Steve coming all the way from Moncton. Mike, the hometown boy from Leamington. These gentlemen have arm wrestled many times. I think Mike always seems to get the bit better of the go. Mike is probably one of the most improved arm wrestlers in the Ontario Arm Wrestling Association. Getting stronger with every match. I think he's undefeated for the last 4 tournaments, left hand and right hand. Steve, though, wants to come down and show him that that streak may not last for long. Both these gentlemen are power hookers, which basically means you turn your wrist in so your hand's almost in a hook position. That's a very classic arm wrestling move, which is the kind of move they'd probably use in the earlier days of arm wrestling when there wasn't that much of a technique. And there you go, right in the center of the table. Mike's holding on tough, and he's pulling him back. And the winner, Mike Morin. And showing again in the replay why Mike is undefeated for the last 4 tournaments, taking Steve down from the center of the table. Now with the pin, you may have noticed that there's a pinning line there. You don't always have to go to that pinning line, you just have to go below that plane. And now we have up to the table in the men's 165-pound class, B side, Dave Knox from Alliston, Ontario, and Bill Lougheed from Wasaga Beach. Dave is 3-time Canadian champion. Bill has been in the sport for about 3 years, hasn't quite obtained a championship yet, but he's trying hard, and both men going for a top roll position, and we have an elbow foul on Bill Lougheed. Your elbow must stay on the mat throughout the whole tournament, throughout the whole match, I should say. If it does come up, you have given 1 foul, and you're only allowed 1 foul per match. Your second foul is an automatic loss. The top roll, which is the move that Dave likes to use, and the move that he's in right now, that's where you try to break the opponent's wrist back. And sometimes when you do that, you go into a slip, especially when both gentlemen go for the top roll. And you go into what we call the straps. The strap is a piece of canvas belt, basically, with a latch on it, where they wrap around the opponent's wrist and your wrist, and then attach to the back of your hand. What that does is that stops the slipping. A lot of people like to pull on the straps because it gives them an advantage. If you have a bit weaker of a hand, the straps will help you keep your opponent bent back. Throughout the match, you must also keep the opposite hand that you're arm wrestling with held onto that peg. If that comes off, you are giving a warning. You must put it back on right away. And Dave, with the top roll move, top rolling Bill out, we'll go to the replay in that, and I'll be able to show you a bit more of what the top roll is about. It's a very advanced move in the sport of arm wrestling. Not too many amateurs do it, but Dave's been around for a long time. And as you see, it's where he breaks his opponent's wrist back across the table and then jumps inside to finish him off. Now we're going to go to the A side. We have up to the table Paul Boyd and Steve Thomas. Paul is from the Palmerston area. Steve is from Moncton. Steve is pulling a weight class up. You saw him a bit earlier, but Steve's been around for a while. In a tournament like this where there's no real title up for grabs, a lot of competitors like to pull a couple classes to get their arms in a bit better shape when it comes to the Ontario and Canadian championships. Steve looking intense on Paul, but Paul's holding on. They're going into a power hook match, but I don't think Paul can match Steve's strength. Paul looked like he had a bit of a jump there, but with Steve's experience, he jumped in for a better position. A lot of positioning in the sport of arm wrestling comes from the hit. Some people have an offensive hit like Paul does, and Steve has a more defensive hit where he jumps for a position to try to stop Paul's hit. And there we are with the pin, Steve in his classic power hook position. We're going now to the men's 180-pound B side. We have Jason Fairman and Bill Lougheed. Bill is from Wasaga Beach. Jason is from Picton. Jason's come about 6 hours to arm wrestle today in this tournament. He's been pulling for about 3 years and is pulling stronger every time I see him. Bill is also pulling a weight division up. He likes to do that from now and then. Both these gentlemen like the top roll. So we'll have to see if we're going to go back into the straps. And with a surprising power hook hit, surprising Bill, because I think Bill knew Jason liked the top roll. And Jason Fairman is the winner. Up to the table next, we have Troy Eaton and Clint O'Neill. Going back to the replay on that, showing how Jason got the jump on Bill, and a lot of times in the sport of arm wrestling, when you lose the jump off the start, you're in a lot of problems. Now we have Troy Eaton from Picton, Clint O'Neill from Maidstone. Troy Eaton's been arm wrestling for about 6 years. Ontario champion a couple times. Clint is a rookie. And Choi with the jump in the power hook position, but Clint's holding on top. But not long enough. Choi with the experience takes Clint over in the power hook position. Mr. Barbet calls the pin. Okay, in the replay we can see where Troy shifts his body to come on top of Clint's arm, and I don't think Clint's strong enough to hold up Troy's whole upper body. And Troy gets the win. Clint now gets to go on and take on Jason Fairman in the semifinals. We're going now to the men's 200-pound weight class. In the B side, we have Richard Blanchard from Ottawa and Trevor Wiper from Leamington. Richard is an electrician. Trevor is a sheet metal worker. You see a vast majority of the arm wrestlers in the sport use their hands even when it comes to their common day job. That's why they're so strong at the table. Rick Blanchard is many-time Canadian champion in his left hand. He's given his right hand a go today, but I think he's just as deadly with the right. Trevor is a rookie. Thought he'd give it a try out and made it all the way through the preliminaries to get down to the final four. As you know, it's a double elimination tournament. You have to lose twice to be out, and both these gentlemen have one loss. The loser of this match takes fourth. The winner goes on to take on the loser of the A round. Rick is known much more for his top roll, but has also surprised me every once in a while and jumped into a power hook. I think Rick's experience would be a bit too much for Paul here, but I'm sorry, Trevor. And Trevor has one elbow foul. As I was saying, I think Rick's experience will be a bit too much for Trevor here. But Rick looks like he's going to try to save his arm and not try anything fancy during this match. As you see at the start of the match, the wrists have to be square. The first thumb knuckle has to be showing, and you have to be able to show a fist between your hand, head, chest, and everything. And Rick Blanchard, the winner. He's not going to give Trevor a second chance at that one. Going to the replay, you'll see where as soon as Kevin moves his hands away, Rick gave the jump and took him down to the pin pad. That's the key to the sport of arm wrestling. If you can get that jump, you've got half the battle won. We're going now to the A side. We have Mark Gardner from London and Paul Engel from Brussels. Both these gentlemen have been arm wrestling for a long time, I think over 10 years for each of them. They probably had more matches between them than all the matches we've seen today. Mark is in the white, Paul is in the green. These gentlemen are many-time Canadian, Ontario, placed in the worlds. They're champions through and through. Paul Engels is known a bit more for his speed, and Mark is known for a bit more of his holding power. Mark isn't a very aggressive arm wrestler at the start of the match. He likes to hit for position, where Paul is the complete opposite. He tries to finish you off quickly. Looks like both men are going for a top roll, and they slip. They're going back into the straps. Paul Engel is being no stranger to the straps. With his style of arm wrestling, he seems to end up in that position many times. I think he may get a bit more of advantage in the straps, because it takes your opponent's hand out of the match a lot more with the straps strapped in. You can use the straps as almost like a weapon to break your opponent's hand back at the wrist. The straps have come a long way from when I first saw them. When I first saw them, they were a big leather thing, where you almost had to put it on like a glove to the canvas thing, where you see today it's much more comfortable for the arm wrestler, and it's not as bulky or hard to put on. I'd like to thank some of our sponsors today: Empire Bowling Lane, Beaver Lumber, Partners Drywall, and Community Trophies, who made us some beautiful looking trophies for today's contest. Thank our referees today, where the head referee is Kevin Kelly, who's refereed world championships, Canadian championships, a multitude of many other championships. He's probably one of the most qualified referees in Canada. Rick Barbet is probably right there behind him. As you see, these gentlemen pulling for a long time, so it takes them a bit longer to lock up. They probably pulled each other about 200 times over the years So they know each other's tricks, so it's kind of hard to get away with anything. You see a lot of psyching out in the sport of arm wrestling. Some people like to go up there psyched, some people like to go up there calm. Both these guys have been around a long time, so they know how to go. And Paul with the fast start in a top roll position, but as you see, Mark's holding on tough. The strap sort of helps him a bit there because he's pulling sort of back towards his right shoulder, which is sort of bending Paul's wrist back right now, and Paul's going for finger position. In arm wrestling, you are allowed to move your fingers, so when you move your fingers up the hand the way Paul's trying to do, you attack your opponent's hand, also trying to help bend that wrist back. I think these guys are staring each other down now, both waiting for the other to make a move. Mark likes to capitalize on mistakes. Paul is a nice steady puller, and Mark breaks his wrist back and jumps inside. When Mark broke his wrist back there, he gave himself a lot more power because he jumped inside using his tricep, chest, stomach muscle, everything, which is also allowed in professional arm wrestling. It's a very common move when your hand or wrist are getting tired. So you're putting all your weight on your opponent's bicep. As you see, Mark breaks his wrist back and then brings his right shoulder behind his hand. That's called the inside move. And he's pushing down with everything he has just on Paul's bicep, and Paul's bicep just isn't strong enough today. Paul goes now to take on Rick Blanchard in the semifinals. We're going up to the men's heavyweight class here. We have Mike Clark from London and Troy Eaton from Picton. Troy's pulling up a couple weight classes here, it looks like. The only way you can get better in this sport is to pull bigger, stronger guys. And if you keep picking on the little guys, it doesn't work all the time, because when you get to a tournament, you've got 30 guys there who can pull the same way as you. So when you pull the bigger guys, you just get nothing but stronger. Mike Clark is a factory worker from London. Troy's given up a lot of weight here. Troy weighing in at 175, Mike at 240. These gentlemen have pulled each other before, but it was back down when Mike was down in weight. Mike's decided to give the heavyweight class a try. So a lot of times the added weight gives you a lot more power. You might think it might be against your advantage to pull the bigger guys, but Troy has a lot more speed than a lot of these bigger guys have. So let's see if we can see if Troy's going to try to use his speed to jump all over Mike's hand. Mike is also an Ontario champion, and Mike stops Troy's hit right in the center of the table, but Troy went for a top roll, but Mike hooked him back in. Troy right now, as I told you earlier, is in an inside position where he's pushing with everything he has right down on Mike's bicep. Troy's using his tricep, chest, stomach, and every bit of energy he has in him. Hopefully it doesn't wear him out for the smaller classes. It'd be to Mike's advantage to try to drag Troy out of that position, but sometimes when you get in that position, it's kind of hard to do anything because you got to pull right against Troy's whole body. And Troy with a power hit and with an upset. Troy giving up 70 pounds, beats Mike Morin from London. I don't think Mike was expecting that second hit there. I think Mike was going to sit there and try to wear him out a bit. Hoping Troy would wear out, but Troy probably has more stamina than anybody in the sport. And Troy surprising Mike with this quick hit. As I said before, the wrist doesn't have to touch the pinning string. It's only got to go below it. And Troy Eaton with an upset. Now goes on for the chance to take on the loser between Paul Ingalls and Earl Wilson. Earl is from the Collingwood area. Paul, as I've said before, is from Brussels. Paul's going to try his chances in the heavyweight class, see if his speed can pay off. But looking at the Earl's arm, you can sort of see that Paul's speed would have to pay off. Because if he gets in a power match with Earl, I don't think he's going to have too much of a chance. Earl, like Mike Morin, is probably one of the best up-and-coming arm wrestlers there is out there. They have nowhere else to go but up. Earl is a power lifter, trying to get into the sport of arm wrestling, another sort of power sport, as you'd say. Hoping that his years of benching will pay off. And there we go, a slip from Paul Ingalls back into the straps. This might be a bit more of an advantage for Earl. He can hold on to Paul's hand a bit better. And in the replay you can see where both Earl and Paul are going for a top roll. And a lot of times you bring your fingers up, and with both opponents bringing their fingers up at the same time, when you have that much pressure going the opposite way, Both hands are going to come apart, but they're into the straps, which is basically like being married, as Rick Blanchard would say. At times you'll see the referees pulling back on the competitors' shirts when they come close to their arms. As I've said before, your arm is not allowed to touch your shoulder, hand, chest, anything. If there's any advantage from that, you are given a foul. Looks like they're almost ready to go here. Kevin Kelly making sure the wrists are straight. Paul going for the hit, but Earl just too powerful, pins him. That's a hard thing, pulling a couple weight classes up the way Paul does. Your speed works, but if you get stopped, you have to pray for some sort of foul or something to get the match started again. Paul goes for the hit in the replay, and Earl in a top roll position brings Paul down to the pad. We're going now to the left-handed class, starting in the men's 150-pound. We have Blair Pope from Orangeville, Luc Forbet from Ottawa. Blair's only been pulling for a couple years, but he's getting stronger every time I see him. Luc's a Canadian left-handed champion from 1992. Both these gentlemen like to use the speed and the top roll. Which you'll notice in the smaller classes, the top roll is much more common. They try to get a match over quickly, because usually in the smaller classes there are much more caliber of arm wrestlers. Instead of having 4 or 5 good arm wrestlers, you'll have 10 to 12 good arm wrestlers. And they proved me wrong going into the power hook. Blair Pope showing his speed, I think surprising Luke there a bit.